Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The SparkFile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, your one-stop summer breeze for creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're an OG listener, welcome back, Sparkler. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are good questions, and we have got answers.
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations.
Here's the deal. We are makers who make all kinds of things.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time or want to be making stuff all the time, you know the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry.
So we're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a reflection on life during the end times.
Oh, God, Camion. Or a fearless act of documentation that tells the power structure, we're watching you.
Oh, every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you might just make bravery your default setting. So without further ado, let's open up the Spark File.
Suze, I'm really excited to hear what yours is. That sounded so good.
Camion, I am so excited to share this spark today.
Oh my gosh.
It's not an easy spark, but it is a good spark.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's just that little description, that little teaser. I got real excited.
I heard it in your voice, Kay.
You're going to I know, I really came to life. I was like, oh man, I'm really fighting a little low energy thing today. And then you said your like teaser. I was like, oh,
it's a goodie.
Yes, I'm alive.
Yeah. I'm scared of yours. I'm scared of your spark.
Really, you don't have to be. Yeah, okay. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Okay.
I'm going to jump right into it if you're ready.
You're going first. I'm ready. I'm ready.
First. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to say we've talked a lot of times, many times, about the benefit of like a news break, a social media break.
Oh, news diet.
Yeah. Relief from this relentless cycle of doom and gloom.
Yeah.
There's just so much negativity, and it feels like it's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse. In fact, here are a few apocalyptic headlines I've come across recently.
We were talking about this the other night.
Were you really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't wait to.
Do any of your headlines refer to locust?
No, but that's a good one too, because I read about this though. There were the fires in Australia. There was a locust thing somewhere else in the world, and now there's coronavirus. So
That's
really,
right. There's swarms of locusts devastating India.
India. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
So here are some of the headlines. The coronavirus is not our first apocalypse. That was crosscut on March 24th, 2020. This is not the apocalypse you were looking for. Wired, March 30, 2020.
Were we looking for a zombie apocalypse?
That's right. That's what we prepared for, and we got
That's right.
COVID-19. We are living in an apocalypse, American Magazine, April 30, 2020, after the COVID apocalypse, Wall Street Journal, May 27, 2020.
Boo.
Boo, there's a lot of it. According to a CNN article titled Coronavirus is Bringing a Plague of Doomsday Predictions on March 23rd, there was a book published in 2008 by an elderly woman named Sylvia Brown. Have you heard about this?
I know Sylvia Brown. Sylvia Brown is do you know who Sylvia Brown is?
She's a psychic.
Yes.
Is this the same woman?
Same woman. She was on a lot of talk shows when we were growing up. And do you remember Sylvia Brown on talk shows?
I do not.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
She was, I would say she was one of the first, now there are all, the Long Island Medium and all the, all of that.
Yes.
John Edwards and people like
crossing
that.
over. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I feel like she was kind of the first.
She's the OG
of those TV.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
I did not make that connection.
That's
I did not
Sylvia
make
Brown.
It. Well, what we know about Sylvia Brown is that she was a psychic, and she claimed that she had been receiving premonitions since she was 5 years old. The book that she wrote in 2008 was called End of Days: Predictions and Prophecies About the End of the World. And in this book, she made this claim. In around 2020, a severe pneumonia-like illness will spread throughout the globe, attacking the lungs and the bronchial tubes and resisting all known treatments. The book went on to say, almost more baffling than the illness itself will be the fact that it will suddenly vanish as quickly as it arrived, attack again 10 years later, and then disappear completely.
Huh.
That's right. At the time, a few people buzzed about it, but then the prediction faded away, as many of them do, and Sylvia died in 2013. But of course, now with the arrival of coronavirus, there's newfound attention on the book. And apparently, according to CNN, the book has shot up to number 2 on Amazon's nonfiction chart, and physical copies are now selling for hundreds of dollars on eBay.
Okay. Get it, Sylvia Brown. Oh,
That's
my God.
Right. So granted, many people are predicting and have been predicting the end times on the reg, right? It's like, I don't know. It's one of those sort of like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere kind of ideas, right? It's always like, it's an apocalypse somewhere, right?
Yeah. I don't, as you're talking, I just want to interject one moment.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the definition of apocalypse really is. Like, that word obviously has been thrown around so much, but I don't even know if somebody pressed me to define it. I don't even know what I would say.
Oh my God. I can't even tell you how excited I am to hear you say that because of what I'm about to share. Like, the
definition of the word apocalypse.
Is this going to be one where you're like, yeah, I will get there. But first I will say this, like, I had not really been thinking of this time as an apocalypse. I don't typically think like that, but something happened for me this week, and I came across one of those mind-bending, perception-shifting, like plate tectonic level adjustments in my brain that really, yes, I was like, what just happened? I would like to share it with you now.
I can't wait.
This week, I discovered what the word apocalypse actually means.
Hell yes, Camian, right on time.
Right? The word apocalypse, I mean, the origins of the words. It's not how we use it now, but the origin of the word is derived from the Greek words apo, which is un, and kaluptine, which is to cover. Said
Good
another
work on those
way,
pronunciations.
apocalypsis, which became apocalypse. Uncover, to uncover or to reveal is what it means.
Really?
Yes. And of course, I was like, well, maybe this is obvious to everyone else, but I had always and only learned the word in relation to revelations in the biblical sense. And I'm embarrassed that I hadn't really thought about the word in a deeper sense. I just always associated it with like fire and brimstone, the plague to end all plagues.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, of course, it's being tossed around in this time of like disease and illness. But
so
now,
it means to uncover?
To uncover. It is a revelation. It's a reveal. To reveal, the unveiling or unfolding of things not previously known.
I had no idea.
I had no idea. I mean, that's the origins of the word. Obviously, it has taken on,
right,
additional meanings. But now I am thinking of this time as an apocalypse. It is a reveal for me. It had now this like has shifted my mind to start thinking like, what has this nearly 3-month pause, this break from routine, this time of new fears and old fears revealed to me? Like, what have we uncovered on a personal level, on a collective level, nationally, globally? I am super sparked by this new perspective. So for my spark this week, I'd like to share a few things that this apocalypse has revealed to me personally and what I think it's uncovering collectively. So yeah, I'm suddenly like just sparked by the word because first of all, I would have just never associated. I don't go there typically. So now I'm like, oh, let's look underneath. Like what is it uncovering? So, all right. So here's a few things. So on a personal level, I have mentioned before that my therapist has said issues that we had before a pandemic are only heightened by a pandemic.
Yeah.
So for a variety of reasons, I've been thinking a lot about my mom recently. I think I've mentioned we had a complicated relationship. I love her very much, but I've been very aware for some time now that she definitely had unprocessed trauma in her own life that she struggled with for decades. But I said to my therapist recently, I told her like it was always very confusing for us kids because I knew my mom was in therapy. Like she really worked on breaking cycles of abuse and trauma. And we knew she was trying.
Wow.
Certain things didn't seem to evolve. Like there were key struggles that lasted her entire lifetime. In fact, I said to my therapist that we would sometimes joke, lovingly, of course, but we would joke that my mom seemed to have just enough self-help knowledge and therapy to like explain her behavior, but not enough to change her behavior. To
change it. Oh my God.
Right? So we would say like, well, she's had enough self-help, just enough to be dangerous, but not actually to, evolve.
Fuck, that's fucked up. Oh
Suze,
my God.
I really think you're going to love this next part. My therapist said something to me so revelatory. I will not go back and see things the way I used to see them.
An apocalypse.
I'm apocalypsed. Is it a verb? Can we call it a verb?
I've been apocalypsed.
I've been apocalypsed. She said, another thing to consider is the time frame when my mom was getting therapy. Because of course, therapy itself has evolved.
Yes.
But at the time that my mom would have been getting professional help, in that moment, the major focus was on insight. Gaining insight was everything. And of course, insight is important for sure, but it's cerebral. It gives logical explanation. It connects the dots and helps you understand a behavior or an impulse on an intellectual level, but it doesn't go deep. It doesn't address emotion. And we now know that
yes, exactly. Awareness is an action. Awareness is awareness and action is action.
That's right. And that like the field of psychology and psychiatry has now put more emphasis on the need to connect insight to the emotional and the physical, so that when you touch an old wound and it hurts, you allow yourself to feel it, that you not only see and understand the connection between the old wound and your current behavior, but you can allow yourself to feel the emotion, which we talk about all the time. Feel the emotion. You can identify the feeling in your body in order to learn how to respond differently. But my mom didn't get that training in her years and years of therapy. It was staying on the surface level, like in the realm of understanding only. And in retrospect, I can see that it frustrated my mom as well, that she could understand things, but it wasn't enough to fully process it. Like it wasn't enough to release it because she wasn't allowing herself to have the emotion or to feel anything.
Yeah, it's almost like she just was like step one, step one, step
Yes,
one,
but
just like living in step one without advancing on to step two,
That's
step
right.
three.
But therapy at that time was only step one.
Exactly.
That's what's amazing is that like
Yeah.
decades of her therapy. And it was like, great. So now you understand why this causes you to do this. And that's it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
This was an amazing revelation for me. I can't even begin to tell you. Over here in my apocalypse, I'm uncovering even more compassion for what my mom went through in her lifetime and how she even like sought help to process it, but the help itself was limited.
Wow.
I mean, for me, this like changes so much, and it makes me just want to put my arms around her and hug her and say, I can imagine how frustrating that was for you, because you need to feel things. You need to go ahead and let yourself feel those things. Feel it.
Can I ask you, like in her absence, are you able to take that information and activate it in yourself so that you can like not to make therapy like Super Mario Brothers, but so that you can sort of like advance to the next level, to the next screen? Are you able to sort of activate something in yourself with that awareness so that you can move forward?
100%. And the first thing is doing exactly what we talked about, which is feeling that. Like, so how does that feel like to make this revelation and not have my mom here to be able to talk to her about it? Like, that is a very deep feeling of sadness and loss. And I'm still grateful for the shift in mindset for me on my remaining years on this earth.
Yeah.
To have like a new understanding for sure. And it's funny that you called it like, up leveling, like a video game, because I was joking around with my therapist and I was like, I'm really winning at this therapy game. And she goes, you are winning. She's like, I never would tell. She's like, I don't say that to people, but she's like, you're willing to do the work.
But I think it on the inside.
I mean, she's honest. She's like, some people like want to be in therapy, but then they resist doing the work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, through my tears, I'm like, I'm 100% here. I'm doing it. So doing the work. But
I love it.
Yeah, that was a big revelation. Another thing I'm uncovering and really examining is the fact that I think I'm a workaholic. And I have really been looking at that and how like throughout my life, I've thrown myself into work always. And in retrospect, I think I've probably used work as an excuse to like avoid going deep into relationships, or used it as a way to protect me from the vulnerabilities of creating and putting my creative work out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've gotten a lot of like positive external validation from being a workaholic. Like we obviously live in a culture where busyness and overworking are celebrated and valued.
Yeah.
It's like the one form of addiction that often comes with praise and accolades. Even when people tell you that, you should find some life balance, typically they still want you to accomplish everything they're accustomed to you accomplishing.
That's
Just
right. That's right.
Right?
Like, yes, the very people that want you to achieve life balance. And I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'm like, Nathan, I really want for you to be able to like relax, take a day off. But can you do that thing for me that I needed done? I'm guilty of that.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
I just think we just live in that culture. And I just am acknowledging, I'm just uncovering it. And I've seen it in myself before, but it's been real easy to be like, I see that, but I'm just put a little blanket over that and deal with that later.
Kick a little dirt over that.
I'm like,
some leaves, just some dry leaves.
Yes,
my
the
God.
rug. But I think also I have a fear of dying penniless and alone. So work always seems to be
why that made me laugh.
No, it's true. It's like, I wish I could even say that that's like a unique fear. It's not. I know it's like, it lives somewhere in many, many, many people, this idea of like, oh no.
But you were saying that you think the solve for that, the antidote for that is work, like in your bones.
I've used it. Yeah. It's a temporary anecdote. I know that. But I will go to it to try to like alleviate whenever that fear comes up. I'm like, oh, but I could work harder and I could make more money and I could be okay. When in actuality, it's just workaholism.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, when there's like no distinction between work and personal life, working at home, it's been very revealing to me. Like I can and will work from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night easily, unless I force myself to stop. Yeah. And that's just like a regular average day. That's not like, I totally get when you're on deadline and you're like pushing through and all that. Yeah. That's not even that. I'm frustrated by it, obviously, but
I am frustrated with this in myself too, because I'm sort of like when I'm tired, honestly, I'm the same, I'm very similar and I'm tired, but I'm sort of like, well, if I want to get all the things done that I want to get done, if I want to make all the things that I want to make, if I want to make sure that I'm keeping my financial commitments, then I have to. I know. And I'm like, what have I set up for myself? What is this life?
Well, it's something to examine.
It is.
It's just that, like, I ask myself the same thing of like, well, what would I give up? And there's not an easy answer for that, but I definitely want to keep an eye on investing in the relationships that mean so much to me. I just want to look under this rock a bit more closely and see what else I have to learn from this. And maybe it is a lesson in delegation. Maybe it is a lesson in, working more efficiently, as opposed to just working more. I don't know. So while we're apocalypsing, I also uncovered, like what I realized like I'm uncovering during this time is just an even deeper love and appreciation for my darling Wesley. He'll be embarrassed that I said this, but he has surprised and impressed me over and over during this pause. And we've been together like 15 years now. And I just like continue to delight in this human being. And I just feel grateful to share this experience. I won't like bore you with any more gushiness about him, but suffice to say, my appreciation and adoration for him just knows no limits.
I love that.
And that has been uncovered during this crazy time. So those are just a few of my personal revelations that I've had during the apocalypse. But I think I'm not the only one making discoveries. And I've also been thinking about the things that we've uncovered collectively. Here are just a few. First, I think this pandemic is revealing inequities in a really, really big
my
way.
God. Oh my God. Yes.
I mean,
and
right?
say more. We can't stop talking about it in this house. We cannot stop talking about it.
It's so much. And what I'm going to say is super generalized because we don't have all the time in the world on this podcast. But first of all, I think we can clearly see the inequities in our healthcare system. I think it's revealed more obviously why we need it, why we need to make it more accessible to everyone. I think having it linked to our jobs is really tough at a time when so many people, 40 million people, have lost their jobs due to a public health crisis. And on top of that, they have to worry about losing their health insurance. I mean, it's infuriating.
Yeah.
I think we're exposing the inequities in our financial system and in our economy, how so many people will benefit and make money from this health crisis, how corporations will take advantage of the bailouts, how poor communities will be hit harder, how people who are fighting for like universal $15 an hour minimum wage became essential workers. We have relied on them to survive, and we can't even value the work they do enough to pay them $15 an hour.
Yep.
Teachers, how much have we learned about what they do for our children everywhere? And they fight year after year for a decent wage. I think it's just become so clear that our economy, as it's set up now, does not allow everyone the ability to cover their basic human needs. And I think it's becoming more visible throughout this pandemic. Someone posted on Facebook, I think we've mentioned this before, but we didn't really go into detail, but this idea that we're not all in the same boat. We are in the same storm, but the circumstances play out very differently for people based on age, race, location, housing conditions, transportation options, financial security, health insurance, your employer,
access to technology, the internet,
access of all kinds. It's so much. So I think it's been incredibly revealing, and I could just hope that we will be willing to do something about it, when we go to vote or make decisions about our tax dollars and how they're used.
Yeah.
I mean, I just hope it's not all for naught.
Yeah. The one we can't stop talking about in this house is all of the aforementioned and how there are, it was all decided, well, school's going to go online now. School's going to go online. And if you don't have readily available access to rock solid internet connectivity, if you don't have a device, if you don't have a cell phone, if you don't have a Chromebook, even there are students who are just shut out of the opportunity to learn.
That's right. And then without school, parents, they can't go do their jobs. So are we forcing a decision? If school stays online, you're forcing a decision to have to give up a job that your household might need so that someone can stay home with your children. It's
crazy. Yeah.
Another thing I think that we are uncovering is the importance of true leadership, genuine, knowledgeable, experienced leadership. And this is true on the macro level, the highest level of government, but also true local government. It's true in each industry that you see who's leading the way on our industry. It's true on each individual company that you may work for. Yeah. And it's even true in the way you run your household right now. The need for clarity of communication is being revealed.
Yes.
For no other reason than our freaking nervous systems need to rest. We need our adrenal glands to get a break from the up and down and the stress of not knowing what are we supposed to be doing? What's the right thing to do? What matters? And why are we arguing over unnecessary bullshit?
Cams, you and I were talking the other day about how I will just speak for myself. In our house, I feel super fortunate because everybody who is living here right now and quarantining right now in this house is on the same page.
That's right.
We are all in agreement about the way we're going to adhere to the CDC guidelines and the way that we're going to conduct ourselves. even
Yeah.
interpersonally, we're all on the
Yes.
same page, and we all have a similar commitment to keeping the house like safe and peaceful and happy when we can.
Yes.
And that is not the case in everybody's house.
No. And then to go back to the first thing about inequities, there are households that just don't have the luxury of making a choice between, keeping their whole house quarantine or
Right.
having a job.
Right.
And that creates a tension point
Yes.
and another layer of stress.
Yes.
But then I think even within, so some things are outside of your control, but then some things are in your control and people just simply don't agree. And just having the clarity, I think, within your household and making those decisions and sticking to them is huge, because we all, I feel, are craving some kind of clarity in, like, I guess, our behavior, our new norms for the time being, even if they're temporary. Can we all agree on these things?
And I think we find frequently that the answer is no.
Is no. And we're
Yeah.
getting mixed messages constantly too.
Yes,
So
correct.
it's all over the map. And then people's individual companies are making decisions that are either in line with or not in line with other recommendations. And I think we're craving really strong leadership
Yeah.
on every level. And some states have it. I feel like New Yorkers are happy with, like, Cuomo's. I don't know if you get Cuomo's like nightly email, but I do. I subscribe to it, and it's super clear. It's usually like point 1 through 6, and then there's like a refreshing moment of a deep breath moment or something. And it's consistent. It's clear. The clarity of what will it take to reopen? What are the benchmarks we need?
Yes.
What is everyone supposed to be doing? It's very clear. So leadership was another one. On a more positive note, one of the biggest happy revelations I think we've uncovered or rediscovered is a vital need for fresh air, trees, time in the sun. Like, if we ever took for granted previously, this apocalypse has revealed a primal need to be outdoors more often. I think for a large number of people, this desire to commune with nature has been revealed in this time. Like, to take in the silence, to commune with, the trees, the animals, the wind, the breeze, all of it. It's also shown that decreasing our emissions from cars and planes and cruise ships can make a difference in just a few months' time.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's made it more visible, like the direct connection between man's behavior and climate change.
Yeah.
Since cities have shut down, we've seen populations of various species rebound. We've seen animals roaming the newly open spaces. According to Forbes magazine, studies have shown that within 30 years, much of the ocean could be restored to full health. That's like less than one generation if we actually decided that that was a priority.
Wow.
Yeah, I really think and hope that people have uncovered a need for a deep and meaningful connection to nature. And hopefully that will play out in a newfound commitment to protecting our land, like the Amazon, like our national parks, all of that. I'm hopeful about that. And I think people have also revealed a stark reminder of how short life is and that nothing is guaranteed. And
that's right.
I think I'm seeing a collective reorganization of priorities. Our health, our relationships, our family and friends are like rising to the surface. Yes, careers are essential, money is essential, but seeing how quickly entire industries can be taken down, you realize like you can't build your entire foundation on climbing a career ladder. And I think this time alone has given people the ability to take some space and contemplate what principles and priorities they've built their life on. And they're reevaluating how to make space or how to reorder where they put their energy, in order to prioritize what is truly important.
Yeah.
So there's many, many more things being uncovered, to say the least. But these are some of the observations that stood out to me. So now I must ask, of course, what do we make of it? First of all, I'm super curious to know what everyone is uncovering about themselves and their own lives.
What a good question. What are you apocalypsing about yourself?
What are you apocalypsing during this time? And I think what we make of it will grow from there. Personal revelations can lead to really profound creative work, but collective insights can guide us all to make changes in our lives and get involved in new ways. As a culture, we can decide we don't want to rebuild everything to look exactly the same way it looked before.
Right.
A famous quote and famous moment from the film Apocalypse Now says, "Someday this war is going to end." And it's true. This too shall pass. And one day we'll look back at this great pause, and I wonder, what will we think it revealed to us? Is it the literal end of the world? Probably not. Likely it's more what REM sings about, the end of the world as we know it. But now that we've revealed what's underneath, we can determine to reset our priorities and build a better world for all of us. Like maybe the things we're uncovering and discovering will help light the way to recreate our lives the way we want them to be, filled with more light, more love, more belly laughs and church giggles, more art, more understanding, more equity, more safety, more easy breathing, more peace, and more harmony. I sound like a hippie, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I love it.
Spark.
I love that spark. And I'm just sitting here. My mind is just spinning on the possibility of it. I was speaking with a friend recently who was saying, people talk about like when we get back to normal. And it was like, it's going to be a new normal. Like we're not going back to the way things were before. Some things potentially, maybe there's going to be a new normal and a lot of growth that's going to come out of this time. And I'm so, number one, curious what the world will look like, because I do think we will, when we ask guests to divide their lives between like, is there a demarcation line from your personal life? I divide my life before this event and then after this event. And for so many people, I include myself in this, I will view my life before the pandemic. Some a little bit of during, and then a lot of, hopefully, if I live long enough, a lot of after. And I'm like, what is it going to look like? And here's what I'm thinking. I really want to impact and make choices and influence as much as is possible. Some things are out of our hands, but I want to influence what I want my life to look like.
Yes. That is exactly my hope in writing this spark, Suze, because I think we can be proactive in determining our priorities and determining what we want the world to look like, instead of like waiting at home and being like, well, I hope someone's going to tell me what the world's going to look like.
That's why I get frustrated with people when they say, I'm going to wait for direction and then I'm going to activate. And part of me is like, that makes sense, because you have to figure out what the parameters are that you're working within.
Sure, in some cases.
I get that. I feel slightly differently. I'm sort of like, okay, it's a little bit of a free-for-all right now. So what do I want? I'll tell you, one of the things that has revealed itself, has uncovered itself, has apocalypsed itself to me is I have craved for a long time, and now I'm getting and I'm loving location flexibility. I love it. I love Zooming to class. We're taking a class right now, and I love attending via Zoom conference. I don't have to commute to that class. I can just like go soak up all the yummy educational goodness. And it just like, I love it from the comfort and safety of my own home. I love it. I love being in the same room with you. I also love, there's a certain ease about being like, let's meet at 2:00 and we'll podcast. Sometimes there's technical difficulties, but there's technical difficulties when we're in the same room.
That's right.
So I don't want to be a complete hermit, but I do love location flexibility. Yes. And I want to make a life where there's more of that, maybe less getting on planes, less getting on trains.
Yes.
And so that's one thing that I've learned of many.
Suze, I love that. And that clarity, I think, is like the gift that we can take if we're looking for it. What's being uncovered? What's being revealed to us right now? And what are we going to do about it? So if an inequity is being revealed right now that you cannot tolerate, what can we do about it so that the decision just isn't rolled out to us at some point? We're like, oh, I guess this is how things came to be.
Yeah. The one that's really lighting me up right now is the piece around, is there anything I can do to contribute to the conversation or contribute to the solution around equity and access for all students? So that they can get a good quality education. Because if you think about it, if they have great internet and the right device and a safe place to be,
that's right,
they could drop into school, any school. They could be educated on the highest levels if they're able to like pass through the gate. And the gate is great internet access, a solid device to work on, and a safe environment in which to work.
And you're bringing up an amazing point that people will need to keep an eye on. And if you're not hearing about it, you need to look into it, because what's happening right now is that obviously tax dollars have been cut, have been reduced enormously because people aren't spending money in cities. And so the places where they have to balance a budget, like New York City, the education system is going to be cut by millions of dollars. Their budget will be cut by millions because they just don't have it. And it was already so low. So what will happen, and how will that money be distributed fairly so that the students who were already struggling to have access to what they need are not struggling even more?
Yeah. I mean, I think that education piece is the center of, has the potential of being at the center of so much positive change.
Yeah.
But if if we are not voting and putting our money there, then we are continuing a broken system.
That's right. I mean, if we think we're going to just kind of go back to what wasn't working in the first place, I mean, there really is, I know it's like at this point, it's trite to say, but with every crisis, there's opportunity. And the opportunity in education is to finally reimagine it the way we have been talking about doing for years and years, decades.
Yeah. Yeah. Cams, this is a good, I love this spark. I love it because these are hard fucking times. And this is all about possibility.
Aw, thanks, Suze. Thanks.
Yes.
I try to think that way. And I'm trying to, just keep my eyes open for things that are revealing themselves, because there is a temptation for sure for me to be like, can I take a nap and then wake up when someone's figured this out? And then I realize like, oh, I have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh.
But look at you keeping your eyes open, looking for sparks. Looking, seeking, scanning.
That's
I love
right.
it. Should we take a little breaky?
Let's do it.
Okay. Camian.
Yes.
I just want to say the spark is an intense spark.
Okay.
This is your trigger warning.
Okay.
This is your content warning.
Okay.
So do what you have to do to take care of yourself, listeners. Cams, I'm sorry you're in it for the ride with me.
I'm in it. Thank you.
This week, like pretty much every other week in recorded history, brought us more stories of racism and violence towards people of color. If it was a different week or even a different day, there would be a different name. But this week, we saw racism fatally unleashed on a man named George Floyd, who was killed by a Minneapolis police officer who suffocated George Floyd by kneeling on his neck. George Floyd's alleged crime, his alleged crime was trying to make a purchase at a convenience store with a counterfeit $20 bill, allegedly. The officer who killed George Floyd has been fired and charged with murder.
Finally.
The arresting officers who were present claimed that George Floyd resisted arrest, but footage taken by several cameras at the scene from several different vantage points are telling a different story. And as of this recording of this podcast, there are more recordings that haven't been released, more pieces of footage that haven't been released. And if I understand correctly, authorities have not released the body cam footage from the officers. And they have asked the convenience store owner not to release their footage.
Whoa.
People of color have been targeted in this country for centuries. And let's be real, if this is what cameras are capturing, I hate to think about what isn't being captured on film and what has gone undocumented for centuries before cameras were so ubiquitous.
That's right.
All of this reminds me of another man of color and his relationship to cameras. And that man is my spark for today. And that man's name is Russ Ewing. My sources are Wikipedia, an article from the Chicago Sun-Times by Maureen O'Donnell, an article by Herbert G. McGann for the Associated Press, the Intercept podcast, and the main source for my spark today is the amazing podcast Criminal, hosted by the wonderful Phoebe Judge. If you don't know Phoebe Judge and you don't know all of her work, you're in for a treat. And I want to say that, again, her podcast was the principal source for my spark today. Her awesome journalism, her awesome storytelling. So if you like the spark, go listen to Criminal, especially the episode called Call Russ Ewing, which leads me back to my spark, Russ Ewing.
Russ Ewing.
Russ Ewing was born in Chicago in 1923, and at the age of 7, he was orphaned. He was first taken in by an aunt and later adopted by a neighboring family who he referred to as his aunt and uncle. He said that he met his wife, Ruth, in kindergarten. She worked as a high school librarian. I mean, as an adult, not when she was in kindergarten.
That was going to be impressive.
Or he was in kindergarten and she was the high school librarian. It was very inappropriate.
Also awkward. Yeah.
No. Let me clarify. He met his wife, Ruth, when they were both in kindergarten. She grew up and worked as a high school librarian.
Nice.
Russ was a gifted piano player. And in the 80s, he even headed up the Russ Ewing Trio. He didn't pursue music professionally because he said he didn't like that nightlife scene. But in the 1950s, Russ Ewing became one of the city of Chicago's first few Black firefighters. He described getting to the scene. This story is insane. He described getting to the scene of a house fire, and the white woman who owned the house said she wouldn't let Russ and other Black firefighters extinguish the fire. And apparently, as a reward for her racism and bigotry, that woman's house burned down.
Good.
Camion, how fucking racist would you have to be to let your house burn down while able-bodied people are standing there fully suited up and ready to help you?
Fucking believable. It's so ignorant. It's so idiotic. I mean, it
leads to the game.
Senseless.
How racist are you? Like, it is insane.
So racist that you would let your house burn down.
I feel like that's the definition of cutting off your nose to spite your face.
I feel like that's the definition of karma and getting what you deserve.
Congratulations, you bigot. Okay, so as a firefighter, Russ Ewing had this firsthand inside look at the way Black firefighters were being treated in Chicago in comparison with other white firefighters. In addition to the racism of the people they were charged to serve, like that bigoted lady, at that time, fire stations were segregated and Black firefighters were rarely being promoted. And white firefighters who behaved badly or were alcoholics were sent to work with the black firefighters as punishment. So Russ started exposing this information in a local black newspaper called the Chicago Defender. And at first, the bravery. So at first he wrote under pseudonyms, and then he began identifying himself.
Wow.
And as a result of that, other media outlets reached out to him. And as a result of that, in the mid-60s, Russ Ewing got his first job in television at WMAQ in Chicago. And originally he was hired to be a film courier, but he also pitched stories. And he was then promoted to write copy.
Yes.
And then he appeared on camera first in 1967 when he was promoted to become an on-air reporter.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Go
So he was only one of a small handful of black employees at the station, but it was important at that time to have black reporters and black cameramen, etc., because a black news crew could go into a neighborhood that a white news crew could not easily access. So he would go into a black neighborhood, and people would be so ready and willing to talk to him and get other people to talk to him that he could get all the footage he needed for a news package in like 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So Russ is out in the field working as a journalist, doing these investigative stories that exposed abuses at Chicago's animal shelters and exposing discriminatory lending practices by Chicago area banks. And then his work took a surprising turn. So on the podcast Criminal, they play this great interview. It's this recording of Russ Ewing in a 1992 interview with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And he tells the story about how he was on the scene covering a breaking story about a person. It was a man with mental illness who was holding his own mother and some young children hostage. Mm-hmm. And the police were surrounding the house where this hostage crisis is unfolding. They don't want to rush the house out of concern for the safety of the hostages. And after it had been going on for a long time, Russ says to the police, "Let me see if I can talk to the guy." And the police say, "Well, go ahead and get your head shot off. We can't stop you." I mean, Camian, I know this was a different time, of course, but I swear if I saw that in a movie, I wouldn't believe it.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. You would be okay, that's
really, they let the reporter into the resolve the hostage situation. So, but they said, go ahead. So Russ gets up near the door of the house, and the guy recognizes Russ from TV and he lets Russ in.
Oh.
And they talk. And Russ said he didn't talk about surrendering. He just talked about the philosophy that any kind of living is better than any kind of dying. So they talked for a while. Some accounts say a few minutes. Some say they talked for an hour. And then the man who was holding the hostages put the gun down, and Russ Ewing and that man walk out arm in arm. And that was the beginning of Russ Ewing exercising his superpowers to de-escalate hostage situations.
Oh, God. Wow.
Yeah. You doing okay over there? Okay.
Yeah. That really got me. That just really got me, because that is a skill. That is a superpower. It is a superpower. Heart and soul in the midst of that. Yeah.
In the midst of very heightened situations, to be so calm that you instill calm in other people. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Truly amazing.
So in 1976, two men robbed a currency exchange office, and they took two people hostage. They fled to a nearby apartment. They broke in. They barricaded themselves and the hostages inside the apartment. They were surrounded by police force, and they refused to come out and said they didn't trust the police. And when the police asked who they did trust, the men said, Russ Ewing.
No way.
So, the police contacted Russ Ewing. And according to a cameraman who was present, what finally swayed the two men to surrender was Russ's assurances that they wouldn't be shot. And by Russ saying, if they shoot you, they'll have to shoot me. And that was the beginning of Russ Ewing exercising his superpower of keeping people especially people of color, safe when they surrendered to the police.
Oh, God.
And the next week, another call came in for Russ Ewing. And after that, the calls kept coming in for Russ Ewing.
That's crazy.
But are you doing okay over there, Cams?
I am. I'm just, I'm holding it together. But that is amazing.
It's, I'm telling you, superpowers. But to understand why Russ Ewing was so in demand, you have to know a bit more about Chicago at that time. And I just want to say again, this next part describes acts of intense violence. So please, if you're listening, use your discretion.
Mm-hmm.
In Chicago at that time, there was a detective commander named John Burge. According to the Intercept podcast, John Burge grew up on the southeast side of Chicago in a changing neighborhood. He flunked out of college and became a military police officer, a sergeant in Vietnam, in a POW camp, where it was later demonstrated that they were practicing torture during interrogations. And after he left Vietnam, John Burge came back to Chicago, where he became a police officer. And then he quickly became a detective. And he came to manage an entire detective division on the far south side of Chicago, which was a predominantly Black part of the city. And John Burge used the dehumanizing torture tactics that he had learned in Vietnam to interrogate people who were suspected of committing serious crimes. So John Burge and some of his detectives were known as the Midnight Crew, or Burge's ass kickers. And they would identify a suspect. Cammie, and this gets really tough. They would torture that suspect into confessing to those crimes. And by torture, I mean beating, I mean burning, I mean suffocating, I mean mock executions, I mean shocking suspects with what was essentially a homemade torture machine. And according to firsthand accounts of people who experienced this torture, Burge himself would put a bullet in a revolver, spin the cylinder, put it to the temple of the suspect, and play Russian roulette.
Oh my God.
Cammie, it's so extreme and it's so hard to take in, but like the videos that we're seeing of these people of color who are being what is essentially like tortured and killed, I feel like it's important to look at it and to know it.
Well, to know how long this has been going on.
Yeah.
And there have been times in our history where it has been more covert, like undercover, like behind closed doors. And, but not that it has gone away, not that it hasn't happened, but there have been times that it has been hidden. And then these times where it's like in broad daylight, knowing that there are phones recording you, I just can't. I just can't. But I wish we could point to a time in our history when this wasn't happening.
But we can't because it doesn't exist. So on Criminal, they share a recording of a Chicago public defender named Mary Jane Plasick, and she tells a story of a time she was working on a death penalty case as a public defender, and she produced a picture of a holding cell bench in a jail, and the suspect had scratched into the holding cell bench. This is an oak bench, scratched into the surface of the bench. They're torturing me. And that was why the suspect gave a confession. According to the Criminal podcast, things got so out of control that the Cook County Public Defender's Office in Chicago wrote to the U.S. Attorney General about the systematic torture of Black male suspects in order to coerce them into making confessions. And according to a former Chicago TV reporter named Charles Thomas, there were people who spent 25 or 30 years in the penitentiary on charges that they confessed to because they were being tortured. So it wasn't just a singular, terrifying, terrible, torturous, traumatic event in somebody's life. It led to the false convictions of people who were coerced into confession.
Oh my God.
Because they were being tortured. It's crazy.
And they
it's
were just singled out by these guys, either out of convenience or out of like intentional takedown. We're going to bring this guy in for this crime.
It seemed like when they had it in there, they were like, that's the guy, that they would stop at nothing to torture these confessions out of people.
Oh
and there were people that were, again, wrongly charged. By the time they were done with him, they were like, I'll confess to anything.
My God. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. But remember, Camian, this was before everyone was walking around with a portable film camera in their pocket. Russ Ewing was a trusted Black man moving through Chicago with a camera. Yes. And he was doing his work in the midst of all of this extreme abuse of power and corruption in the Chicago criminal justice system. Russ Ewing and his cameramen would use their news cameras to take head-to-toe pictures of a suspect who was surrendering to make sure there were no bruises on them when they were delivered to the police. And in this way, the police could not claim that a suspect had pre-existing injuries on their body before they surrendered themselves into police custody.
My God, that is one of those like, well, what when you're feeling helpless, like what part can I play in a solution for this? And for him to realize this is one thing I can contribute to. I can
That's exactly
this
right.
image. Oh my God.
That's exactly right. Reporter Charles Thomas is quoted on the Criminal Podcast. It was well known that if the cops were looking for you, whether you did it or not, and you went to Russ would ensure that you would be turned in and that you wouldn't be beaten or tortured at the hands of the police. Russ Ewing and his cameramen would document your surrender and they would put it on the evening news, and that would create public proof that if you ended up with a broken arm later, that arm was broken in police custody.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Russ Ewing was showing the police and the public that someone was watching what was going on. Someone was watching what they were doing. And because the authorities knew he was watching and would follow up, it prevented misconduct by the judges, by state's attorneys, and by the police.
Yes.
This person, this bravery, this like, it's so fucking smart. It's just so... Yes,
it's so smart. It's I have my eyes on you.
It's I have my eyes on you.
Has our eyes on you.
We are watching you. Mm-hmm. So once word got around that you were safe with Russ, that you could tell him anything, that he could keep a secret, he became this trusted go-to. And sometimes the suspects' families would contact Russ because they knew that in his hands, their loved ones would be delivered safely into custody. He would talk gently with suspects. He would affirm that they were not a pariah, even though they may have done something egregious. He would touch their hand during their surrender. He would walk with them arm in arm all the way. He would promise that police would not use handcuffs. He would stay very physically close. He would even ride in the police car with the suspects when they were afraid of being alone with the police.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So
just like it's humanizing. It's like,
yes. That's exactly right. God. I feel like what John Burge and those detectives were doing was so dehumanizing.
Yes.
And what Russ Ewing was doing was exactly that, Camian. It was humanizing people. And the people they knew it. They could feel it from him. So over a decades-long career, first at WMAQ, NBC5, and then at WLS, ABC7, Russ Ewing helped more than 100 people wanted by the police to turn themselves in. Some counts have it at about 115 wanted suspects who volunteered themselves into the custody of Russ Ewing. A fellow journalist said, no one else could do what Russ Ewing was doing. This was Russ's world. He could do this. He could provide people with safety and dignity, even during a surrender. Another news colleague named Pat Arnold said that while his fellow reporters could comprehend what Russ was doing was dangerous, Russ didn't seem to vibrate any fear or anxiety. He just took it all in stride. And as a result, his colleagues did as well. And I'll go one step further and say, as a result, the people that he was working with felt it, and it de-excited their nervous systems as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
To be around that calm. It's leadership. It's like
it is.
Everything's
it is.
okay.
It's trust. It's trust. It's trust. There was an ABC7 camera operator named Ken Bedford who said Russ was unflappable. Even when he picked up a suspect who had a very large gun collection, and Russ called out, "Bring the weapon with you that you used to shoot the person." And then somebody yelled back, "Which one?" It's just like unfucking flappable. During an uprising at a maximum security Indiana State Prison, inmates requested Russ Ewing's help in negotiating peace.
Oh my God.
In a 1995 Sun-Times interview, Russ recalled one of his scariest surrenders this way. This guy who had shot a couple of people in Gary called, wanting to turn himself in. He was hiding out in an old water-soaked shack. I went up and he's sitting there with a bottle of Jack Daniels and a .357 Magnum fully loaded. And he said, "Russ, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. I want to shoot my gun before I go." And Russ asked, "You got anybody in mind?" So he said, they talked, they laughed, and this guy got the gun and he fired 3 shots into the ceiling of the shack, and plaster was falling every place. And Russ Ewing looked at him and said, "Hey, that looks like fun. Let me try that." The guy gives Russ the gun. Russ fired 3 shots into the ceiling. And he said to the guy, "You got any more bullets?" And the guy said, "No." And Russ said, "I was happy as hell." So this is amazing to me. Russ gets this suspect to hand over his gun. He discharges all of the remaining bullets into the ceiling. He makes himself safe. He makes the situation safe. He had this way with people, this superpower. So after this very, very full career, Ewing said he informed his bosses at WLS of his plans to retire. He said, "Because a guy has moved into my house and I can't get him out." And when they asked him who, Russ said, "Father Time." During his career, Russ Ewing won 9 Emmy Awards, a Chicago Headline Club Peter Lissiger Award for Exemplary Journalism, and 2 Medals of Merit from the City of Chicago. In 1997, he was inducted into the Chicago Television Academy's Silver Circle, and in 2003, the Chicago Association of Black Journalists created the Russ Ewing Excellence in Journalism Awards and Scholarship presentation.
I feel like that doesn't even begin to cover.
I know.
Like, it's lovely journalism awards, but it's like there's so much more. Yeah.
I know. Russ Ewing died on June 25th, 2019, at the age of 95 years old in his home in Paw Paw, Michigan. And after his death, ABC7 reporter Paul Meinke said, "He was unafraid of just about anything. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't flamboyant. He was just meat and potatoes. He was earthy and honest." And when you watch him, Camion, and when you listen to him, you're like, yeah. It was so straightforward. It was so calm. It was amazing. So what do we make of it? I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm making of it is fuel. I am using Russ Ewing's story as fuel to continue educating myself about racial injustice and inequalities and about abuses of power that are hard to look at. As a white woman, I feel like I have this privilege that others don't. It's easier for me to just tuck myself away and look away from what's going on, but that's not a privilege that everyone in the world has. And I believe if we're going to see change in this world, each one of us is going to have to step the fuck up, especially not just the people who are the victims of this inequality and of this racism and of this violence. the system is so broken, Camian, that sometimes it just feels overwhelming, and it feels like one person couldn't possibly make a difference, that I couldn't possibly make a difference. But Russ Ewing is evidence that one person can make a huge difference.
Yes.
And I feel like his work reminds me that we have to keep trying. We can challenge ourselves. We can educate ourselves. We can understand hard truths of what's happening in the world and expand our understanding and our empathy towards people who we feel are different from us.
Mm-hmm.
I also, another what can we make of this for me is I'd like to work on making myself more fearless. And I don't think I'm as brave as Russ. I don't want to put myself in harm's way. But if the moment arises, I want to stand up. I want to challenge violence. I want to challenge racism. I want to challenge corruption. And I want to be brave.
Mm-hmm.
And through it, like Russ, I would like to be able to, I don't know if I can live up to this spark, but to be able to do so and not vibrate fear or anxiety.
There's no bravery without fear, right? If you didn't have fear, you wouldn't need to be brave.
Right.
So, I think moving through that fear and doing it anyway is really best case scenario.
What we can hope for.
Yeah,
but I see something in him where he was one of those people that could come into a situation. When people talk about Jesus Christ, I always think, oh, this is what Jesus was doing. He was going to these situations and he was able to calm people. He was able to bring peace to situations. And I feel like this was a gift and a superpower that Russ Ewing had as well.
For
He
sure.
was able to go into situations, not like jack them up with more adrenaline, but de-escalate, de-excite other people's nervous systems because of where he was coming from. I think he was able to connect with people in a very human way and to instill in them a sense of safety and trust.
Yeah.
And I just think even in small ways, even if we're not like face to face directly with violence, even in small ways, in a classroom, for instance, to be able to instill that sense of safety and let people know that they can be themselves, that they can tell their truths. That's just one example.
That's right. Yeah.
But there are ways of, I think, moving through the world and letting people know that I am a human being, you are a human being, and we can connect in that space.
Yeah.
I also think Russ Ewing would be the subject of a phenomenal documentary. And from what I can tell, I don't think that exists. I also think this would make a hell of a screenplay. If Paul Winfield was still alive, he would be perfect in the role of older Russ Ewing. But you know who would be great as young Russ Ewing?
Who?
Donald Glover. Donald Glover,
wow.
Go get yourself an Oscar. I'm telling you, this would be oh my God, it would be such a good role for him.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I feel like if people, like a lot of people listen to Criminal and she's done a lot of the legwork on this story.
Oh my gosh.
It's right there.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It needs to be told. Yeah.
It is an amazing story. And, other sparks include, I'll just say, I don't want to give this person too much airtime because he's such a fucking piece of shit. But John Burge is, talk about antagonist in a story. Holy shit.
He get, does he, like, what's the end of his tale?
What happened to him? I'll tell you, Camian. By the time John Burge
burned down, I hope.
Nope. By the time John Burge was dismissed in 1993, he and some detectives under him had allegedly tortured more than 100 people in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The full extent of his misconduct didn't become known until later. So in 1993, he was fired, but he continued to collect a pension. And sidebar, I am so fucking sick of hearing about these people who commit heinous crimes and then because of either a loophole or not a loophole, they continue to collect a pension. If you haven't seen the HBO movie Bad Education, it'll make you want to punch your TV. But by the time the criminal investigation of John Burge and his crew occurred, the statute of limitations on torture had passed. But he was later convicted on federal charges of obstruction of justice and perjury because he lied under oath that he said that he hadn't tortured suspects.
Okay.
But listen to this. He was only sentenced for all his heinous crimes. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. I feel like for what he did, he should have been kept out of society for the rest of his life.
100%.
In 2016, the city of Chicago paid nearly $5.5 million to 57 victims who had been tortured by John Burge and his so-called midnight crew. And that was in addition to more than $100 million the city of Chicago had already paid in reparation settlements and legal fees stemming from police abuse. John Burge ended up dying in Florida in 2018. But it enrages me that taxpayer money,
that's how they'll
paid
solve
the salaries,
That's right.
the pensions, and then like solved the legal disputes of these fuckers. It's enraging to me.
It's not enough money. It's just not enough money. You said 57 people split $5 million, but their lives, their lives were destroyed.
Completely. And the lives of the people that loved them. And John Burge had a boat. And he took that homemade torture machine and took it out on the boat and sank it because it was evidence. He took it out in the middle of water and sank it to hide it. Allegedly. But it's so enraging. It's so enraging. And that's when I said earlier, all the things that are caught on camera now are the tip of the fucking iceberg of all the things that haven't been caught on camera.
That's right.
Other sparks from this. So even though he's absolutely reprehensible, it's interesting subject matter. It's interesting subject matter to write about, to base characters on.
When we talk about the sparks, the things that make you angry, make you cry, make you want to punch your TV, those are sparks. That's go right to that source because, a story where that man gets his retribution, where he gets what's coming to him, can be a very ultimately gratifying story.
Yeah. And just even if the story isn't told that he gets retribution, to know the story, to tell the story in a way so people can take it in and educate themselves, I think is equally as important.
That's true.
Other sparks, Phoebe Judge. The work that Phoebe Judge is doing on Criminal, the podcast This Is Love. One of my favorite sparks I've ever done was sparked by the podcast This Is Love that Phoebe Judge and her team make. And it was the story about Lynn Cox swimming with Grace and the Whale, which is one of my favorite sparks I've ever done. That was sparked by a Phoebe Judge podcast called This Is Love. She also has a great series that she's been doing since the pandemic struck called Phoebe Reads a Mystery, where every day she reads a chapter from, for instance, an Agatha Christie mystery or a Arthur Conan Doyle mystery. Right now I'm in the middle of her reading one of the first detective novels, which is called The Moonstone. She's great. She's such a spark. I also want to share some sparks that have been fanned into flames and shared with the world. And that is art that has been made to honor George Floyd and to protest his murder. A group of 5 artists created a mural at the location where George Floyd was murdered. The mural is located at the corner of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue South in Minneapolis. The group started working on the mural on Thursday morning and finished it within 12 hours. And, I think that is a spark. That is a spark. And also there's a Chicago-based artist with the Instagram handle at Shirien.creates. It's SHIRIEN.creates. And Shirien Creates did a beautiful piece honoring George Floyd Their Instagram bio says, infusing design/illustration and my passion for social justice and healing to imagine and create new possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah, I just love that Instagram bio. So that is my spark for the day. I know it's a heavy spark and an intense spark,
It's an
but
important spark. It's an essential spark. Honestly, it's essential.
These apocalypse times are tough. I mean, when you were talking earlier about the headlines, between the pandemic and racially charged incidents like this and the locusts and all of it, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a lot.
Because it's very real, all of this is happening, and it adds to our feeling of helplessness to, how to make a difference and how to change when it feels all so overwhelming. But the answer is in the Russ Ewings of the world. It is find one way you can make a difference, fully commit to it. There are ways. And, Russ may not have been touted, like we don't know his name, like a household name. But thanks to Phoebe Judge's work, more people will. But he's
Donald Glover. Get on it.
Inspiration. Yeah.
But it's the thing, where I'm coming out at the end of the recording of this podcast is we have to keep our eyes open.
Mm-hmm.
We have to keep educating ourselves. Mm-hmm. If we have to take a break for a short time to pull ourselves back together, then we do it. We feel our feelings and we decide how we're going to use them as fuel to pick that thing we want to work on.
That's right.
And we have to keep working on it and
take action. Yeah.
Take action back to your spark, to take action. But I feel like keeping our eyes open, continually looking for those sparks and not shutting down.
It's essential not to shut down, obviously, and to not be passive about it. All of everything that's happening with George Floyd, it is also a part of this. Can we decide how we want to rebuild the world? What is the world we want to live in? And what will it take for us to create that? Let's not sit back and wait until someone gets that done or someone tells us.
Yes, or someone tells us how it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to help decide how it's going to be. Yeah. I want to influence that conversation. But in order to, I feel like, influence that conversation, we have to keep our eyes open.
Yeah.
We have to keep our eyes open and we have to keep seeking ways, those Russ Ewing ways, seeking ways that we can be the change we want to see in the world, essentially, Gandhi. I think
true.
That's what it's all about. Yeah.
It's so true.
Oh, Camion.
Suze, that was an amazing spark. That's one that's going to just stick with me and give me lots to think about after this.
I can't recommend the criminal podcast, especially it's a great podcast through and through. But if you want to hear more, the episode with the title Call Russ Ewing is a great place to start.
Great.
I guess that's it.
Ooh.
Woo.
Woo.
Friends,
Suze.
I hope this put another bunch of sparks in your file, or maybe it made you want to take a nap. That's cool too.
That's all
but
right.
Listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark, here's what I mean. When we say that, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, this is what we're looking for. As you move through the world with your eyes open, if you encounter something that makes you feel something, tell us about it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it. We want to hear about it. If you've taken that spark and you've fanned it into a creative flame, we want to hear about that too.
Mm-hmm.
You can email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even take your feedback. But as you know, the price of admission, first you got to share a creative risk that you've taken recently.
We hope you'll follow us at The Spark File on social media and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. If you like it, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, We don't take it personally.
We don't. If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that has been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to bake a cake for your sweet tooth, or make some noise in a recording booth. Make some art from things that break your heart, then tell the world your truth.
You gotta take it and make it. Suze, that was beautiful. I like that one. That was
Thanks,
beautiful.
Kim. I love you.
Love you too.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the chief creative officer and chief marketing officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.